about
لبيك اللهم لبيك.
and who has given the the idea of the Pakistan and the current section of Pakistan. So it's personally very inspiring, especially for the youth and for all of us. We invited Dr. IRFAN JEHANGIR, who has some expertise in deep knowledge about the writings of Iqbal and Inshallah. Today, Inshallah, he will just introduce us and he will just go through some kind of idea of different kind of work done by the Iqbal, especially his relevance for our current world, for current Ummah, Inshallah. We will listen, and without any further ado, I just ask Dr. IRFAN to start with.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Jazakallah khairan for inviting me today. I think one of the important things which I have over the years learned about Allama Iqbal is that his main work is in Urdu and in Persian. And the world we live in today is a global culture of English. And it is such a shame that the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim youth, are unable to relate to him, are unable to have that direct contact, because language is an amazing thing. You need to be able to express yourself in the language you know. It is impossible to translate. Any language, it's impossible to translate. Even the prose is impossible to translate, let alone poetry. Poetry is totally out of the way to be able to translate. So today's program, today's topic is about the relevance of Allama Iqbal. Is he relevant to us? Because he has lived more than a century ago. He was born in the 19th century, he passed away in the 20th century, and we are now in the 21st century. Is he still relevant? That's the topic today. And we'll try to hopefully, inshallah, learn, is he really relevant? So how do we actually judge relevance of anything? There are three main areas to judge relevance of anything. Is it relevant? Number one is the idea, the thought, or the report that we are discussing, or the person we are discussing. Has he or she identified the issue, identified the problem? If a problem has been identified by the individual, the main problem, then fair enough. Then we can understand that there is a relevance of that thing. Second is, if we take away that, the relevance that has been, or the idea that has been researched, will it make a difference? Will it make any difference at all? And the third area is that if it was relevant then, is it still prevalent now? Can it still be the same area? So let us see about Allama Iqbal. Allama Iqbal's relevance to our current ummah is not only profound, but in my view, increasingly urgent. His poetry and philosophy were not meant to belong to a single era. They were designed by him to awaken every generation of Muslims from two important aspects. Two important aspects. Number one, spiritual stagnation. After some time, people do become stagnant, do become tired of what they are doing regularly. And the second is political submission. So, is it relevant? Is it relevant? Both these things which he has highlighted, in my view, it's absolutely relevant. We have a spiritual stagnation and we have a political submission, which has continued for a long period of time. And let's try and look at it from a structural perspective. Allama Iqbal's book, Allama Iqbal's poetry is used by everybody. If people from the subcontinent, people from Iran, the Iranian Revolution was inspired by Allama Iqbal. All the Khilafat movement, the movements against the British colonialism, the movement for Pakistan, everything has its part to play. The Allama Iqbal's poetry, it has its part to play in that. But the real aspect which he has written for us is the book called the reconstruction of religious thought in Islam. That is where Allama Iqbal really identifies and specifies the solution as well as the problem. And this is where his relevance comes into being, whether he is relevant or not. So this is the book, and it's a very difficult book to read, although it's in English. You have to really follow the chain of thoughts and the trail of that when you read this book. The first and foremost part of that is a revival of Islamic philosophy. Iqbal calls for, this is where he used the word reconstruction of religious thought. You don't reconstruct religion, religion is already complete. The Quran and Sunnah is, alhamdulillah, complete. But you reconstruct what? You reconstruct the understanding which people have developed over all these years. You need to rethink about this views that we have now in the name of Islam, in the name of Deen that we practice, and that has to align. Is it aligning with the modern knowledge, especially science and philosophy? Not Islam. Once again, one must emphasize this point. Iqbal, in his book Reconstruction of Religious Thought, has specifically mentioned that we are not aligning Islam with these things. We are aligning our understanding. Is our understanding contemporary or not? Number two, the dynamic nature of Islam. He argues, Iqbal, with great evidence and with great strength and stress, that Islam is a living and evolving spiritual system. It is not stagnant, it's not static, and must adapt to the changing circumstances while staying true to its core principles. And only Islam can boast of this. No other philosophy in the world or religion can boast of this, that it can adapt to the new circumstances without giving up its core principles. Third one, reconstruction of ijtihad. This is something which he has repeatedly emphasized, and this actually covers the whole revival. This is how he portrays and how he presents the revival should and can happen, that it has to be independent reasoning. He emphasizes ijtihad as the tool through which Muslims can renew and reinterpret Islamic law and thought for contemporary times. Again, the principles cannot change, but once the principles are understood, the understanding is always dependent on the time period that people are living. And with time, that fiqh has to evolve. If you become stagnant in your fiqh of 1400 years ago, or 1300 years ago, or even 200 years ago, you will not be able to make it contemporary. And then integration of faith and reason, which was the first thing. Quran is the only book of faith in among all the books in the world which says afala taqilun, afala tadabbarun 52 times. 52 times it mentions, why don't you use your reason? Why don't you use your intellect? Why don't you use your mind? So he insisted that there is no conflict between religion and science, and they both seek the truth and must work together for human progress. So you have to, when a person is looking at Islam or is looking at reconstruction of the religious thought, he has to keep these things in mind. That reason is not something which has been abandoned by faith. In fact, reason has been presented as a reason for people to actually look at faith by these words like afala taqilun, afala tadabbarun. The fifth concept that he gave is about the self or khudi. Central to his philosophy is the idea of khudi. What does that actually mean? And if you read the Persian part of it, it becomes more clear. In Urdu, obviously, absolutely as well. It is developing a strong, self-aware individual who realizes their divine potential and moral freedom. Now, this is important to understand. What the Western concept of khudi is, or self is exactly the same, with one single difference. It's exactly the concept of a strong, self-aware individual They realize their potential and they realize their freedom. But these two words, divine and moral, that are the two differences which Allama Iqbal developed and which highlighted that there is a divine reason why we create, and we have freedom within the moral. We do not have absolute freedom. We have freedom within those moral bounds. The sixth one, Allama Iqbal got a lot of flack about, and he got so much of trouble for hitting hard on this major problem which Ummah has been in, that he did not write his book in Urdu or in Persian. He wrote his book in English and wrote the most difficult language that he could ever use, so that the people who were attacking him on this, they could not actually read that book, and they will read that book later on when the translations would happen. He warned against the rigid imitation or taqleed and urged Muslims to return to the spirit of inquiry that defined early Islam, that led the Sahaba to come out of the desert and spread it to the rest of the world without any barriers. And that was the spirit of inquiry. If they had been rigid in imitation and taqleed, if followers, they would never. This is a fact. This is an fact of nature that the imitators and followers can never lead. They can never lead the world. The seventh point, which he highlights in his book, is the unity of universe and God's eminence. He was researching the modern physics. That was his huge part, obviously, and metaphysics. So Iqbal portrayed the universe as dynamic and interconnected. He reflected upon God's continuous creative activity. And he highlights this in his poetry as well. ये कायनात ना तमाम है शायद क्या रही है दमादम सदाए कुन फयकून. That new horizons are being created. So his idea of this wasn't just that the world is being created and recreated. And we know now from science that the nebulae, how they recreate stars, how things are recreated. But he wasn't just looking at that. He was looking at creating naya zamana, naye subh sham paida kar. You have to create new days, new nights, new days for yourself, and create new areas of real concern. The eighth point that he highlighted was of spiritual democracy. He envisioned an ideal Islamic society based on equality, justice, and spiritual values. So a spiritual democracy guided by the Quranic vision of humanity and amruhum shura bainahum. He emphasized and highlighted the Misak of Medina, where it was a multicultural society. It was Allama Iqbal who inspired the later generations to revisit Misak al-Medina. Misak al-Medina was almost forgotten, which was the first constitution, the first written constitution in history, which Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, drew up, and he drew that up with the Jews of Medina, with the Mushrikeen, small group of them, a small tiny group of the Christians and majority of the Muslims, that they will be seen as one ummah, one community. And the words used in that is just amazing, which people today would find alien if they really look at it. So he highlighted that position of spiritual democracy, where the Quranic vision of humanity is quite clear. It is not something which is guided by people's understanding. So, a revival of Muslim selfhood or khudi. This was, as I said, Iqbal's central message for an individual. For an individual, the selfhood or khudi was a call for Muslims to rediscover their inner strength, dignity, and divine potential. Because when he was around, you see, everybody, when you see what you see, you have to look at what are the things, what is the material around me, and what are the issues, what are the problems, and are there any solutions? So for the next part of our discussion, I'll follow this process of what did he see, and is that still relevant or not? So inshallah, we'll look at that now. So then, what did he see then? He saw the Muslims of his time defeated, imitating the West, and unaware of their spiritual health. They were looking at things like everything has been created by West, everything has been given by West. Oh, we have lost everything. We have lost the battle of words, ideas, thoughts, as well as politics. What do we see now? Now we see the same consistency in that, unfortunately. It's persisting. Many Muslims today still define success through Western lenses, especially the rulers, those who are the controllers of the wealth, the power, and who are the ones who approve things in our part of the world, while neglecting moral and spiritual excellence. So this is no different. Allama Iqbal's poetry, Allama Iqbal's concept of this khudi, this drive to identify, to recognize, and to build this inner strength, this dignity and divine potential, it does not grow old, unfortunately. I wish it would grow old. It doesn't. It just is as fresh as it was 200 years ago. So his reminder was that true revival begins within self. It's not from outside. खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या. Do not be among those people who are begging for your future. You should be the one who are building the future. And that cannot be done unless and until you are a strong, dignified person with divine potential, with moral potential, rather than just the material potential. Second part of this was to awaken the intellectual and cultural slavery, to make people realize how intellectually and culturally we are enslaved. What did he see at that time? He saw colonial domination, not only of land, but of mind. And this is where he was more worried, and where his prominent work, even in the reconstruction of the religious thought in Islam, which I highlighted earlier on, was focused on that it's not the land which is my problem. Land we can regain from them. It's the mind that we can't. It's the mind that they are playing on, and it's the mind which we have lost. Today, what do we see? Today, Muslims face cultural colonization through media, education, and materialism. The new generation, the new ideas, especially now with the age of everything being at a global stage, everything being at the tip of our fingers, it is very difficult to actually say what is the culture of the world today. It almost is a singular entity. So his concept of this blind imitation of both outdated traditions and modern Western ideologies is something which is so important. That's why he has named his book The Reconstruction of the Religious Thought in Islam. So his call for ijtihad, independent reasoning, reminds us to engage Islam dynamically with the modern world, not passively imitate others. You cannot in this world where it is the world of ideas, where the battle is of ideas, of thought, of imageries, of solutions, of problems having a solution. You cannot say that this is how we do things and this is how we will continue to do things. You need to revisit. You need to revisit the sources of Islam, and you need to come up with solutions. You need to identify the problems. But that cannot happen unless and until you have that khudi, you have that dignity, you have that confidence, you have that self-awareness. ताज़ा खुदा बनाते हैं अफकार से इंसान. People create new gods. The gods no longer are made of image. They no longer are made of idols in front of stone or wood. Now it's the afkar, now it's the ideas, the thought that the new gods are being built up. निहात में है फरिश्ता कहाँ न जाए इसे बशर है साहिब असरार है खुदा न बन. So he is becoming God himself. He has found a niche for himself because he is Sahab Asrar. He can break down things. He can understand things. You see, when we look at the world, when we look at the whole world around us, we see material everywhere. And when we see material, among all the creation of Allah that we know of in this world, Nobody has been able to utilize this material, to control this material, to put this material into use. We're having these laptops, we're having these great gadgets. None of the other creation is able to get this material and find out the Sahabe Asrar, to be the one who finds these secrets, who identifies these secrets. Allah has put this capacity and capability in us that we find these secrets of this material. Nobody else is able to do that. But when it happens, it's very easy to make oneself God. It's very easy to worship that. Oh, this is what we have done. This is who we are. तकलीद की रविश से तो बेहतर है खुदकशी रास्ता भी ढूंढ खिज़र का सौदा भी छोड़. This is him making both areas quite clear and categorical, that you cannot have imitation and taqleed of the outdated past, which has accumulated over a religious thought. This is an amazing thing that he did with his book. He highlighted the fact that Islam doesn't go outdated. Quran and Sunnah is not something that would ever fade away, but it's understanding. It's fiqh. Fiqh means understanding. That will come with every era, every period, every time. That will become outdated and will need to be revisited. You cannot impose that on people. If you do that, you will be the losers. You will go back at the end of the queue of nations who want to develop. If you want to develop, you have to go back. You have to keep revisiting, because this book of Allah which He has given you is to the day of judgment. So in here he highlights both the things. You do not become God yourself, and you do not make God of those things which are religious thoughts, not religion of Allah itself. Third point which he highlights is the unity of the Ummah. And how can you attain unity? Because every group, every sect seems to find the truth, and every other person is not on the true path, and only one person or one group is on the true path. So Iqbal's poetry transcends race, sect, and geography. And this is the beauty of him. You will find every sect of Muslims using Allama Iqbal's poetry. They'll find somewhere something which will align with their ideas, with their thoughts. He saw Islam as a living bond uniting all beliefs. That's what it is, as it should be. Sectarianism, racism, geography, he all mentioned that these are इंताज़ा खुदाओं में बड़ा सबसे वतन है जो पैरहन इसका है वो मजहब का कफन है. That even this geographical divisions of into tribes or into the nation states, it's in itself a creation, and it's in itself another idol which has been created. So he saw this at that time, and he was there. The Muslim world was fragmented into colonized states. They were barely getting freedom from the colonizers. And now what do we see? We see political division, sectarianism, nationalism, and all of these things have deepened, sadly, unfortunately. They have not been taken away, but they have not been even diluted. They have, if anything, they have deepened. So again, highlighting the fact that his thought, his ideas, his poetry does not go away, does not fade away. एक हो मुस्लिम हरम की पासबानी के लिए नील के साहिल से लेकर ताबका के काश. He's envisaging the world of the Muslim world at that time, and he's trying to inculcate in them that this is one body, this is one ummah. If one part of it is going to be in trouble, the other part has to feel that pain. And we have manfaat is the same, and if our nuqsan is the same. Our losses, our benefits are exactly the same. If we do not do that, we will not be able to really rise up again as an ummah. So he urged the ummah to rise above differences and act as one moral. Again, going back to the self, this is the way he created that sense of khudi, that dignity, that unless and until you are dignified moral character, you will not be able to have this kind of a wide vision. Iqbal did not see Quran as a museum piece or a set of rituals. He saw it as a revolutionary, ever-renewing way of life meant to lead humanity. He presented Quran, and he argued in the book that this is what Quran is. This is how it is a living entity. It drives people. It drives the concepts of equality. It drives the concepts of justice al-adl, and it leads humanity on that. So when he was obviously alive, he saw Muslims reducing their religion to some formal rituals. Just a few rituals are there, and that's going around, and everybody is just keeping to that. Namaz ho, roza ho, qurbani ho, hajj, ye sab maujood hai, tu maujood. You are doing these rituals, and you're going around hundreds of times. You'll find Muslims even today. Oh, I've done 50 umrahs, I've done these many hajjs. But did you understand that? Did you understand the concept, and did you come back and then actually implement that for what needed to be done? Much of the Ummah still performs faith without understanding its transformative power, how it's meant to transform. أقم الصلاة لذكري. You establish the salah so that you will remember me, not at those 5 minutes, but you remember me after you have done salah. That's the purpose of your salah. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. If it's not stopping you from fahsha or munkar, what is it doing? Are you performing it the right manner? Are you understanding it rightly? This is about rituals, let alone the laws, the basic ideas which Deen has presented in the form of al-adl. So Iqbal's call was to return to Quran, not just to recite it, not just to memorize it and parrot it, which we do unfortunately, but think through it. We put, if any prism should be put in front of our eyes, it will be the prism of the Quran, not any other prism, not any social aspects, geographical aspects, national aspects, sectarian aspects. Quran mein ho ghautazan mard musal. You have to dive deeper into the Quran to be able to really, and that's not something people sometimes say, well, that's going to be very, very difficult. It's not. Quran is a self-explanatory book. Quran repeatedly says, Kitabun Mubin, very clear, very open, no confusions in this book. Fifth point that he raises is, after having these self-aware people who have dignity, who have the khudi, they need to have a vision. They can't just have khudi and then start fighting with everybody. Oh no, I have my khudi. I'm dignified person. You can't say anything to me. No. And they need to have a massive vision. They need to be shaheeds. They need to be individuals of vision, courage, who soar above worldly temptations. Just like the beautiful concept which he explains in his book is about the Shaheen. And he says that when the only other bird that dares to trouble Shaheen is the crow. And this he calls him Zag. And Zag ki sohbat barbad kar gayi Shaheen bachon ko. That the Shaheen kids, the soaring kids, are now being put with Zag, with the crows, and their heroism, their friendship has destroyed this Shaheen. And these Shaheen, what do? They do not fight this crow. They just soar high and high and high and high till a time comes when this crow is not able to breathe because of that thin ear, and it falls down. This is exactly what he tries to say, that the person, the leadership, the vision, the courage, the purity has to be such that you do your job and you keep doing your job. You do not listen to these pecking crows who are shouting at you, who are creating trouble, who are wanting to cut your wings, so to say. No, you soar high and you do not give them time. He inspired men like Qaid-e-Azam to lead people at that time, to get a nation, is something which, when we look at history, both of colonialism and then of the creation of Pakistan, it seems an impossibility. Those who really know history, that's not my topic today, but the way he inspired men like him, not just him, he was the leader, but the men like him around him who actually realized the dream of Pakistan at that time is just amazing. So we need leaders who are guided by character today. So this is the theme, not greed, by service, not self-interest. And when people are in leadership, they really struggle to differentiate between their self-interest, personal growth, personal interests, and the actual service without any greed. Total sincerity, guided by character. And this is what happens at the highest level of the leadership, and that unfortunately trickles down to the bottom as well. So Iqbal's ideal was this Shaheen, independent, fearless, visionary, and always researched, steering and reaching higher parts, thinking about the higher aspects rather than the lower aspects, never being bogged down by what people are saying, what people will say, who will be happy, who will not be happy with things. They are so independent, so fearless that they always focus on their vision and their thoughts rather than worrying about people. So Shaheen is the most courageous and free-spirited individual. परिंदों की दुनिया का दरवेश हूँ मैं, कि शाहीन बनाता नहीं आशी. I don't carry myself in these tiny small bits. I don't even build a nest for myself. And there's this amazing stories about how the Shaheen teaches its kids to fly. It builds, firstly, it doesn't build a nest at all. It builds a nest only when the babies are coming, when the eggs are about to be laid. So when the babies are out in that nest, then it tries to push the nest right to the edge of the mountains because it only makes its highest peak mountains. And then when it tries to push them, if they fly, well and good. If they don't, then it breaks its own nest, throws the nest away, and then pushes them right to the edge again. If they still don't fly, then they actually push these tiny shaheens and they have to fly. So this kind of parindon ki duniya ka darwesh hoon main, ye shaheen banata nahi aashiana. It's got this message that you are looking at a very high soaring, visionary, but grounded in reality, not just an idealism. It's grounded in reality. You are focusing at reality of the world and then transcending the material parts which other people do. Nahin tera nashiban kasre sultani ke gumbad par shahi hai basira kar pahadon ki chattanon mein. And you're not there to just enjoy and let yourself drown in the luxuries of the world, in these temples of luxury, which are these castles and power, corridors of power, or wherever they may be. Oh, Shaheen, you have this vision, you have this dignity, you have this fearlessness, you have this power. Basira kar pahado ki chattanon. You have to live in places which may be dry, droughtful, not those luxurious which you think of, but they will make you. They will make you. In his beautiful poem, he mentions and he talks to the sheikh, to the person who is the imam. पीर हरम रस्म रहे खान कहीं छोड़, मकसूद समझ मेरी नवाए सहरी का, अल्लाह रखे तेरे जवानों को सलामत, दे उनको सबक खुद शिकनी खुद निगरी का, तो उनको सिखा खारश गाफी के तरीके, मगरिब ने सिखाया उन्हें फन शीशा गिरी का, दिल तोड़ गई उनका वो सदियों की गुलामी, दारू कोई सोच उनकी परेशान नजरी. He's saying that उनको सिखा खारश गाफी के तरीके. You teach them breaking and hewing rocks and stones and mountains. Maghrib ne sikhaya unhe function. The West is trying to teach them how to just try and make a mirror for tiny sand together. Don't teach them. You need to teach them khud shikani and khud nigar. You teach them how to break yourself and how to make yourself. You have to make them hardworking. That's the only way this generation will be inspired and they will be able to change the course of history where they are at the moment. And reconnecting with the spiritual strength. He saw material progress as hollow, without any spirituality. So Western civilization dazzled the world with science, but it lacked soul. There is nothing inside. Humanity faces a spiritual emptiness despite technological powers even today. So Iqbal's knowledge was to combine ilm with ishq, love of Allah, intellect guided by divine passion. He wanted people to have that divine passion inspired by the Quran and the Sunnah. So Allama Iqbal's message is timeless because our problems are cyclical, unfortunately. Our problems are not ending. The loss of faith, unity, purpose, and courage. His vision calls the Ummah to rise once again as a moral, intellectual, and spiritual leader of humanity. Afraad ke haathon mein hai aqwam. फकीर, हर फर्द है मिल्लत के मुकद्दस. And that it's the individual. He's not focusing on just the system or the structure. He's telling that you have to come from both sides. You have to work on the system. You have to change that. But at the same time, every individual has to realize where we are, where we stand, and how we can move forward. And every fard, every individual is like a star. And when we combine all these stars, they'll become the constellation. They'll become the cosmos. And then, in his amazing rebuttal and answer to the fiqh of the individual, he amazingly identifies the real problem. तो निको नाम जो कब्रों की तिजारत करके क्या न बेचोगे जो मिल जाए सनम पत्थर के सफ़े दहर से बातिल को मिटाया किसने नवे इंसान को गुलामी से छुड़ाया किसने मेरे काबे को जबीनों से बसाया किसने मेरे कुरान को सीनों से लगाया किसने थे तो आबा वो तुम्हारे ही मगर तुम क्या हो हाथ पर हाथ दरे मुंतजरे you are just waiting. Somebody is going to do, some individual is going to do. He focused on an individual. It's not somebody's job. It's everybody's job. And we have to do it. क्या कहा बहरे मुसलमान है फकत वादा हूर शिकवा बेजा भी करे कोई तो लाजिम है शऊर अदल है फातिरे हस्ती का अजल से दस्तूर मुस्लिम आई हुआ काफिर तो मिले हूर कसूर तुम में हूरों का कोई चाहने वाला ही नहीं जलवे तूर तो मौजूद है मूसा ही नहीं. Allah's fitra is full of miracles. These miracles will happen even today. You need to start. You need to press the button. You need to activate that miracle. And that miracle cannot be activated unless and until you activate it. Allah has given us the freedom of choice. And that freedom of choice means the activation button. It is in our hands. The path will be there. It will open up. The miracles will open. But you need to activate. If you are deactivated, no path, nothing will open, no miracles. And this is, in a nutshell, what Allama Iqbal is trying to convey to us. So, Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you very much for having me in today. If people have any comments or queries, most welcome. Jazakallah. I'm fine.
Focus.
I'll just turn around if you need
Just
it.
turn around.
Yes.
Jazakallah for the inspiring presentation.
Islamic Outreach Project does the dawah stalls up and down the country, inshallah. Please support us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد